That week, I noticed Jack and Emma's artwork had been removed from the refrigerator, replaced by Ethan's daycare schedule and scores of photos of him. When I asked, Melissa said matter-of-factly that she needed the space and didn't think anyone would mind. White kids withdrew also from the common areas. They remained in their tiny bedroom most of the day, their one room where they had a little control. When I had a day off, I started taking them to the public library after school, just so they'd have a place where they weren't shushed and discounted constantly. One evening at the hospital, my colleague Nancy noticed my stress. "Is everything all right at home?" She asked softly. For the first time, I unloaded it all the ins and outs of the favoritism, the constant criticism, and how my children were being bypassed. Nancy listened attentively, then said something that struck me like a bolt of lightning. "It sounds like your parents have created a home where your brother's family feel like special guests, and you and your kids feel like pesky roommates. That's not a healthy home, Amanda. Not for you and definitely not for them." Her words made the truth sink in. I'd become so used to the dysfunction that I'd normalized it. That night, instead of driving directly home from the office, I circled the block and phoned a realtor friend. It was time to exit. "I need to get my kids out of this situation," I whispered to Nancy's words echoing in my head. "As soon as possible." By mid-October, my house was a nightmare. Stephen and Melissa had moved into my parents' house in full. To their rabid encouragement, the 6 to 8 week renovation job was now delayed indefinitely. Every time I asked for an update, Stephen made excuses. I came home one evening to find a shiny new $400 high chair in the kitchen. The box was still sitting in the recycling bin. "We need Ethan to be comfortable when he eats here," my mother announced as I stared at her. She had complained just the week before about the cost of Jack's asthma medication, something that was covered only partially by my insurance. "Jack must breathe," I said, unable to suppress the acidity from my tone. She looked at me as if I were unreasonable. "Your father and I live on a fixed income, Amanda. We can't be expected to pay for everything your children need." Everything? I had already shelled out for all of my children's bills. I also submitted for groceries and household bills, something Stephen and Melissa never did, although they were both well compensated. But of course, that didn't register. The second slap in the face came when Emma was warming up on her clarinet for band class. She had practiced for a total of 15 minutes when Melissa burst in. "Can you do that now? Ethan is sleeping, and I have an important call to make in 10 minutes. Emma had apologized in haste and put away her clarinet, but afterwards wept. That was her scheduled online practice time with her teacher. Now she would be poorly prepared for her upcoming evaluation. That I tried to approach Melissa in a non-threatening manner. "Maybe we can have a schedule that works for everyone." Her response, brutal and discouraging. "My work calls and Ethan's nap are priorities. Emma can do her little thing any other time." Her small interest, my daughter's calling, something that her teacher had informed her that she was really talented at, amounted to nothing in Melissa's eyes. In this household, my kids' desires would always be secondary to the most boring inconveniences of Stephen's family members. And Jack wasn't doing any better. His teacher emailed me about his poor grades and withdrawn behavior. My bubbly, outgoing child was now nervous and withdrawn. When I asked him what was wrong, he spoke quietly. "I can't sleep, Mom. I'm afraid of making a mistake. Grandma and Grandpa shout at us for everything. But Grandma and Grandpa never shouted at Ethan or Uncle Stephen or Aunt Melissa." My heart broke. I began doing extra shifts at the hospital. Have to make money earlier in order to aid our escape. Have to get away from the constrictive environment at home. My parents interpreted this as me avoiding family duty, while Stephen and Melissa were relieved to have me out of the way. The turning point came one evening over a family dinner in late October. My parents had invited some relatives, including my Aunt Susan, one of the very few relatives who had always been kind to me and to my children. That night, my mother went on and on about what a talented child Ethan was. "At 9 months, he's already trying to walk," she bragged happily. Stephen was an early walker too. Some children just have athletic ability. Then she glanced at Jack with a saccharine but venomous smile. Too bad you didn't inherit that from your father's side. David was always so athletic, wasn't he?
I am Amanda. I am 35 years old and the proud mother of two beautiful 10-year-old twins, Jack and Emma. My life changed dramatically after my divorce 2 years ago. To make ends meet, I went back to living with my parents. At first, it was a blessing. With my crazy 12-hour pediatric nurse work days, I really needed their assistance, and they seemed happy to offer it. But what started as a good deed eventually turned into a bitter lesson about family, bias, and betrayal. Before I continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to Dark Revenge Book for more true life stories packed with drama and heartbreak. When I divorced my husband David after 12 years of marriage, I was devastated. Not only emotionally, but also financially. Our household had been sustained on his software engineer income, with me supplementing with part-time nursing so that I could tend to the twins. The divorce awarded me joint custody, low alimony, and sole responsibility for paying for everything myself. That's when my mother Martha and my father Richard stepped in with a proposition. "Just until you get your feet back on the ground," my father had said, slapping my shoulder. Though we'd had a dubious history, I was grateful. I was the straight child that I grew up with, the one who followed every guideline. My brother Stephen was the golden child who never did anything wrong. My relentless, decade-long trek through School of Nursing didn't shine nearly as brightly as Stephen's brash tech startup, a venture my parents had financed, one which now had made him a six-figure success. His and my mother's favoritism had always been evident, but by this point I'd grown used to it. But then came my twins. They were my source of strength. Jack, my creative soul, loved drawing and building, though his sensitivity created more problems sometimes. Emma was bold, outspoken, and competitive. She would not hesitate to stand up for anything that was unfair. Both of them were performing exceedingly well in school despite the divorce and the move. Our compromise with my parents was fine at first. They turned their home office space into the twins' bedroom, and I took up residence in the guest room. I covered groceries, prepared most meals, and watched for kids to respect their grandparents' routines. Given my long shifts at the children's hospital, my parents assisted in the drop-offs and pickups when I couldn't. The plan was simple: save for our own home in a year. I worked double duty, pinching every nickel I could and reassuring my children with a savings chart taped to my bathroom mirror. "Just a little longer," I'd tell them. "By Christmas, we'll be in our own house." Then, Stephen and his wife, Melissa, welcomed their baby boy, Ethan. And in that instant, my children no longer existed in my parents' eyes. My parents turned their dining room into a fully equipped nursery. Even though Stephen and Melissa had a spacious 4-bedroom home on the outskirts of town, they bought fancy baby gear that would only get used during visits. My mother even started standing up Jack and Emma if Stephen needed her for something. "Your brother needs more attention at the moment," she'd say to them. "He's still figuring things out as a parent." The irony stung. I'd been a single parent for 2 years, but for some reason my plight didn't matter. I tried being understanding to begin with. New babies are exciting, and this was their first grandson. I reminded my kids to be patient, telling them that Ethan was small and needed extra TLC. But slowly, the favoritism became harder to overlook. Christmas came, and Ethan's gifts overshadowed Jack's and Emma's. My parents were constantly commenting on how Ethan looked like Stephen as a baby, and reminding me that my twins inherited their father's features. Sarcastic remarks, but painful ones. To protect my children, I invented special time: park trips on my off days, movie nights in my bed, and regular assurances that eventually we would have our own house. I clenched my teeth and tried to remind myself to tough it out for just a few more months. But by summer, the tension escalated. My parents criticized every move I made as a mom: their dinner, their bedtime, even their television time. Stephen and Melissa, however, could not be criticized, no matter how irresponsible they were. By the time August rolled around, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. My savings had us set to move by November. 3 more months, I was telling myself. 3 more months of patience. 3 more months of watching my parents go gaga over Ethan and hardly notice my children. But they didn't just stay that way. They ramped up. In September, things changed. Stephen called a family meeting at my parents' kitchen table. Melissa sat beside him, with baby Ethan dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my weekly groceries.
I saw Jack's face crumple, and then quickly cover itself in a cloak of neutrality. What the message was: all my children's virtues were inherited from their father, and Ethan's brilliance was evidence of Stephen's higher breeding. At the other end of the table, Aunt Susan drew my eye, her face troubled. She took me aside during dinner. "How long has this been going on?" she asked quietly. "It's always been that way to some degree," I admitted, "but it's gotten so much worse since Stephen's family moved in with us." Her tone was severe. "This is unhealthy for your children, Amanda. They are better than to be treated as second-class citizens in their own home." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I'm trying to do something about it," I promised. "I have a plan." And I did in the week since Nancy's wake-up call. I'd been seeing my realtor friend for secret lunch breaks. We toured rental houses, and then I spotted it. A small 3-bedroom house 10 minutes from the hospital, still within the twin school district. The rent was high, coming in at the edge of what I could afford, but my steady job and decent credit secured the approval. I had signed the lease the week before. I had not even told Jack and Emma yet. I did not want to get their hopes up until everything was final. The house would be available November 1st, just 1 week away. I had already bought basic furniture to be delivered and set up utilities in my name. When I told Aunt Susan, she squeezed my hand. "Just let me know if you need anything. I've been worried about this for a long time." Her reassurance was worth more than she knew. My parents' constant accusations that I was oversensitive or jealous had made me question my own perception. Hearing Susan reassure me that I wasn't crazy gave me the last confidence boost I needed. But the following morning, I overheard my father and Stephen conversing. "The contractor suspects it could be another 3 months," Stephen said casually. "Honestly, with the baby, it's just simpler to stay through the holidays." And in that moment, I knew if I didn't act fast, my kids and I would be completely erased in this house. "You are always welcome here," my father said warmly. "This is your home." But at the time, I could not help but wonder whether either of my parents remembered how they had made it quite clear. My presence was temporary, and I was to find my own place in due time. The hypocrisy was almost laughable, if it were not breaking my children's hearts. That night, I decided to take a different approach. I took the twins out for ice cream after dinner, a special occasion on a school night. I needed a break from the dense tension that filled the air in my parents' house more than ice cream. As they sucked on their cones, I drew them in close and whispered, "There's something you need to know. No matter what Grandma and Grandpa say or do, you are great kids. You do have value. What they are doing to you has nothing at all to do with you. It's not your fault." Emma, always observant and intuitive, looked at me gravely. "Are we going to be moving out soon?" she asked. Her question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask that?" I said, startled. "Because you've been working extra shifts," she replied. "And you seem different. Not as sad. More determined." Her comment made me stop. Out of the mouth of babes, my daughter had picked up on the change in me. Before I'd even realized it myself, I smiled and said to them, "Be your great selves for a little while longer. Can you do that for me?" They both nodded, and I saw within their eyes a little glimmer of hope that had been absent for much too long. But reality hit the moment we stepped in the door. Melissa was loudly bemoaning the twins' backpacks in the hall, while Ethan's stroller, diaper bag, and toys were scattered all over the house. "Children need to learn responsibility," she admonished, as if she were the child-rearing expert and I the novice. I smiled grimly, helped my children move their things, and reminded myself, we only had to get through this for another 2 days. What I did not know then was that circumstances were soon to take a turn that would force my hand much earlier than I could have hoped. The following Tuesday, I was working a dismal 12-hour shift at the hospital. The pediatric floor was mobbed, 3 new admits, staffing ratios low, constant tasks. I had barely a second to breathe, let alone glance at my phone. But when I did, My heart skipped a beat. A series of frantic texts from both Jack and Emma lit up the screen. From Jack. Mom, something strange is happening. Grandpa and Uncle Stephen are taking our things. From Emma. Grandma says we have to stay in the basement. This isn't fair. From Jack again. Mom, please come home. They moved all our stuff downstairs. From Emma. I hate it here. The basement is cold and gross. There are spiders. We've got some exciting news. Stephen grinned, speaking only to my parents. We're finally starting that big house renovation we've been planning. My mother's eyes lit up as she clasped her hands together. And in that moment, I had no idea at all of just how much more disastrous things were soon to get. That's terrific news, darling. My mother swooned as Melissa bounced baby Ethan on her lap. Melissa smiled primly before delivering the real bombshell. We'll be needing a place to live while the work's being done. It'll only take 6 to 8 weeks. Before I'd even had time to process what I just overheard, my dad was already nodding his head vigorously. Okay, you'll be lodging here. There is extra room. I tensed up. Well, things are served tight already with the 5 of us. I tried, nodding toward myself, the twins, and my parents, and why Mother shot me a sharp look. Family takes care of family, Amanda. It's only temporary. And with that, the decision was made. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody considered how it would affect Jack and Emma. And worst of all, nobody remembered that 2 years previously I had been told the exact same thing, that our stay was only supposed to be temporary, too. Stephen and Melissa moved in the following weekend. My father helped Stephen assemble a portable crib for Ethan, even though he had never once offered to assemble my twins' beds when we first moved in. My mother hurried to clear out an entire closet to make space for Melissa's clothes, while I had lived out of boxes for months before finally buying myself a small dresser. After that, everything changed. Jack and Emma were constantly being told to whisper because Ethan is sleeping. Their toys, already confined to their small bedroom and one corner of the living room, were now stashed away as clutter. The TV, once theirs for an hour after school, was permanently tuned to whatever Melissa wanted to watch. One evening, after a long shift at the hospital, I returned home to find Emma crying softly on the back porch. What's wrong, sweetie? I asked, drawing her under my arm. Grandma said I was making too much noise with my jump rope. She wept. But Ethan wasn't even sleeping. He was in the living room with Aunt Melissa. She just didn't feel like hearing me count my jumps. My heart went out to her. That same week, Jack came home excited with an art project. He had been chosen to represent his class in a district-wide exhibition. He ran to show my mother, but she brushed him off. Not now, Jack. I'm helping Melissa pick out curtains for their house. I watched the light fade from his eyes, and something inside me hardened. That night, after the kids were asleep, I tried to reason with my parents. I know Stephen and Melissa need help, but Jack and Emma are starting to feel left out. They're starting to feel like they don't matter. My father frowned. They're being overly sensitive. Babies just need more attention. That's how it is. But Ethan is at daycare most of the day. I pointed out. Jack and Emma aren't asking for anything during those times. My mother let out a dramatic sigh. You've always been jealous of your brother, Amanda. I figured you'd grown out of that by now. Her words hurt. Jealous? Was that all they considered me to be? Not a mother safeguarding her children, but a jealous sister. It only got worse from there. Melissa began rearranging the kitchen without asking, grumbling about the healthy snacks I bought for the twins, and leaving her laundry in the machine for days. Stephen acted like the house was his own, hosting watch parties with friends without even checking if anyone else needed the living room. I heard him discussing it with my father one evening. The contractor found foundation issues. We may need to extend the renovation. Stay as long as you need. My father said to him, This is your home, too. My stomach fell. Your home, too. Words I'd never heard. Though I contributed to groceries, cooking, and cleaning. I was always made to feel my being there was temporary, conditional. The showdown came in early October at Sunday dinner. The dinner was cooked with all Stephen's favorite dishes, none of which my kids particularly liked. When Jack politely asked if there was anything else he could have, my mother snapped, "When I was a child, we ate what was put in front of us. You should be grateful." Later, Ethan threw his entire plate on the floor, and everyone laughed indulgently. "He's just discovering his world," Melissa cooed, making no move to clean up the mess. The double standard was clear. Even Jack noticed. He leaned over and whispered to me, "Why can Ethan throw food, but I can't even ask for a sandwich?" I had no answer. With trembling hands, I called home. No answer. I called the children's phones. No answer. I finally sent Emma a text. "Stay calm. I'll be home as soon as I can. I love you both." I explained the crisis to my supervisor, who kindly arranged coverage for my shift. However, an additional hour was needed to finish patient handoffs and acute notes before I could leave. The 20-minute ride home felt like an eternity. My mind reeled with rage and fear. Did my parents really send my children down into that damp, unfinished basement? The same basement that leaked during storms, without proper insulation and freezing nights. I forced myself to breathe as I pulled into the driveway. I had to be calm, thinking logically, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw inside. Jack and Emma were huddled together on the couch, their eyes puffy from crying. My mother was casually sitting in the kitchen with Melissa, sipping tea as if everything was fine. Stephen and my father were nowhere to be found. Emma ran to me, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist. They moved all our stuff to the basement without asking us. They said we don't deserve the upstairs bedrooms. Jack's voice cracked as he went on. "Grandpa said Uncle Stephen's family must have more space because they're more special now." I hugged them both, swallowing my rising anger. I kept calm for their sake. "Let me talk to Grandma," I said. I glared at my mother straight in the eye in the kitchen. "Why are my children's belongings in the basement?" Melissa sipped her tea first. "We needed to make a few adjustments. Stephen and I need a nursery for Ethan and a home office for working. Remote work, you know." My voice was low, a cold calm. "So you just went ahead and stuffed Jack and Emma into a damp, unfinished basement without even talking to me about it?" My mother finally turned to me. "It was the practical solution. The children are older. They can adapt more easily than a baby. And besides, Ethan deserves the best rooms. He's here all day, when your children are at school." Her straightforward cruelty left me breathless. My children deserve to have comfortable, safe rooms just as much as Ethan. I snapped back. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Amanda." She waved me off. "The basement will be fine. Their beds are down there. They'll be okay. Family requires sacrifices." But only in her twisted head did family mean my children must make sacrifices. Never Stephen's. Just then, my father and Stephen walked in the back door. "Oh, good, you're home," my father said casually. "We made some decisions we need to discuss." "Changes?" I echoed, struggling not to vent my rage. "You moved my children to the basement without consulting me." Stephen shrugged as if it were nothing. "We need upstairs. Ethan's getting more mobile. He needs space. And Melissa needs quiet for her calls. And my children need bedrooms that are safe and livable." I snapped back. "The basement is fine." My father dismissed them. I put in additional lights, laid down some old carpet pieces. They ought to be grateful they have a place to live. At that moment, I looked at him, really looked, and for the very first time, I saw the man he truly was. This man who had raised me, whom I'd spent so many years trying to please, had just shown me how little he really cared about me and my children. "Jack has asthma," I said obstinately. "The basement is damp, mildewy. It would trigger a dreadful attack." Stephen rolled his eyes as though my concern was just an annoyance. "You're being dramatic, as usual. Kids are resilient. Melissa and I were brought up worse. Weren't we, darling?" Melissa nodded vigorously. though I knew full well she'd grown up in a 5-bedroom home in a wealthy suburb. Not exactly the hardship she was trying to make it out to be did I glanced at their faces. For grown-ups, all of them united in their determination. Not a single one of them had a trace of guilt or understanding. To them, this was reasonable. To them, the golden child's family deserved the best, and my kids, well, they deserved leftovers. I went back into the living room, where Jack and Emma sat, their faces hopeful that I would somehow repair this. Something inside me shifted at that moment. I felt a sense of peace and certainty wash over me. I smiled at them, a genuine smile despite everything, and said 3 words that would change all of our lives. Pack your bags. They gazed at me, confused. Trust me, I whispered. Grab what's most important. We'll return for the rest. My father followed me in, overhearing my words. Oh, for Pete's sake, Amanda, don't be so dramatic. No one is forcing you to leave. I turned to him, still smiling, but this time gently firm. No, Dad, you've made it quite plain where my children and I stand in this family, and we deserve better. He stammered, taken by surprise. Jack and Emma nervously glanced back and forth between us. I nudged them gently. Go on, kids. Get your backpacks and pack in them what is most important. We'll return tomorrow for the rest. They dashed upstairs as my mother burst in. What is this nonsense? You don't just leave because things didn't go your way. Stephen and Melissa also appeared, Ethan sitting smugly on Stephen's hip. All of them, they're in front of me like some kind of family showdown. This isn't about things not going my way, I answer calmly. It's about respect, something this house has been lacking for a very long time. We gave you a roof over your head for 2 years, my father shouted, and this is the thanks we get. Yes, I said, you did, and I thanked you for it. But I also worked, cooked, cleaned, and raised my children to your standards. Don't pretend this was in your favor alone. I took a deep breath. But today you crossed the line. Melissa snorted. It's just a bedroom arrangement. You're being too sensitive. I turned back to her. Would it be oversensitive if a person shoved your child into a dirty basement without asking you first? Her silence was eloquent. The basement is okay. My mother went on. We raised you and Stephen without all of these so-called special needs parents complain about today. Mold in the basement, I said once more, my words cutting through the room. Jack has asthma. It's cold and wet and dangerous. It's not even a legal bedroom. My father waved a hand, swishing away my words. Government overreach. Nanny government. That's all it is. I was fighting down laughter at the idiocy. To him, safety was nothing but overreach. Until it came to impinging on his own comfort. Stephen grinned, hunching forward. And where do you think you're headed? You don't have savings. Not the way you live. And there it was. Their favorite tale. I was weak, dependent, burdened. They really did believe I had no other options. But they were wrong. I've been saving since the day I moved in. I said softly but firmly. I've been working extra shifts, keeping my emergency fund intact. And 3 weeks ago, I rented a house. The silence that followed was heavenly. They were, for once, speechless, and why Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. You planned to leave without telling us. I was going to give you notice next week, I said. The house isn't ready until November 1st. But after today, my timeline just accelerated. You can't be serious, Stephen jeered. Where are you going to stay until then? That's no longer your business, I replied, maintaining my serenity. I already had a backup plan. Nancy, a colleague, had invited me to stay in her guest room, and my father's face flushed with rage. Everything we've ever done for you, and this is the thanks we get. Sneaking around, walking out in a tantrum over something we didn't see eye to eye on. Disagreed on. I repeated, appalled. You moved my children to a dangerous situation. You told them to their faces they didn't have the same comforts as their cousin, That's not insignificant, Dad. That is the truth of how you treat us. Just then, Jack and Emma came back downstairs, backpacks slung over their shoulders. Emma clutched her clarinet. Jack carried a sketchbook and the little dragon plush he'd slept with since he was 3. "We're ready, Mom," Emma said, her voice steady, stronger than I'd heard it in weeks. "This is ridiculous," my mother declared. "You can't possibly mean to leave right now." "We are," I insisted again. "We'll be back tomorrow for the rest of our stuff." "If you go out that door," my father growled, "you'd better not think about coming back." I gave him an unhappy look. I stopped thinking about that a long time ago. Stephen jumped in, panic creeping into his voice. "Come on, sis. Don't do this in front of the kids. Let's talk about this." My children had already caught on to where they stood in this family. I said to them, my own voice firm, resolute. "There's nothing to discuss tonight." I helped Jack and Emma with their bags into the car. My family was still on the porch, standing there stunned, as if they couldn't accept the fact that I was actually leaving. They had been so certain of my necessity, so convinced that I had no place to go to. I started the engine. My mother rushed to my window. "Amanda, please. You're being dramatic. Come on inside. We'll figure something out." "We'll talk about it tomorrow," I said firmly, "when I come back to pick up our stuff." "But where will you stay?" she asked, her voice finally breaking, the first crack in genuine concern beneath all the indignation. "Somewhere safe, somewhere my children would be really appreciated." That was all I said as I pulled out of the driveway. In the back seat, I watched in the rearview mirror as Jack and Emma looked back at the house we had lived in for nearly 2 years. "Are we actually moving to our own house?" Jack asked hesitantly. "Almost," I told him with a small smile. "We actually have a house we can move into, but we can't do it until next week. We'll be staying at my work friend Nancy's house tonight." Emma, being the sensitive one, asked softly, "Is this because of what Grandpa and Grandma did?" I was careful about how I spoke. "It's because we deserve to live where everyone is treated kindly and with respect. I have been thinking of us relocating for a long time now, but yes, today made me see that we had to leave sooner." Jack gazed downward. I didn't like the way they talked about us. Like we weren't anything. My heart just broke listening to those words. "You two are more important to me than anything in the world," I vowed to them. "And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be around you." No sooner had we arrived at Nancy's place than she flung wide her arms to embrace us. She had prepared her guest room, a queen bed for me and an air mattress for the twins. She even bought ice cream and rented a movie so that the kids would feel at home. As Jack and Emma settled down, picking at their ice cream in silence, Nancy took me aside. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "It takes a lot of guts to set boundaries with family. I just wish I'd done it sooner, before they've hurt my children like this." I admitted. "You're doing it now," Nancy replied, "and that's what matters." That night, as I lay down next to my children in this strange room, I was overwhelmed by a storm of feelings. Sadness for what might have been, anger at the way we had been treated, and terror of what might lie ahead. But beneath it all was something new: peace. For the first time in years, I had stood up for me and my children without apology. Tomorrow would be full of problems, reclaiming our belongings, coping with the emotional manipulation that I knew was coming, getting our new home finished. But this evening, as I watched my children sleep peacefully, I knew for absolute sure I had made the right choice. We were finally free. The next day, I called into work and called in sick. Nancy offered to watch the twins while I went back to my parents' house myself, but I declined. They have to get through this. They have to see that we're doing it together. We arrived at 10 a.m., just as I was certain everyone would be there. My dad answered the door with a frown, though it relaxed a bit when he saw the twins. "Here to apologize for your tantrum," he sneered. "No," I replied firmly. "We've come to collect our belongings." His face hardened again. "Your mother's been upset all night due to your dramatic departure." "I'm sorry she's upset," I said sincerely, but we're still moving out." He moved away reluctantly, and inside, I could see my mother on the couch, red eyes from tears or sleeplessness. Stephen and Melissa were not around. "Where are Stephen and Melissa?" I asked. "They took Ethan to the park," she said quietly. "They thought it would be less stressful if they weren't here when you packed. At least they had been such politeness." "Jack, Emma," I told my children quietly. "Clean your room. Remember what we talked about in the car. Only what you need and prefer. We'll replace the rest." The children went up the stairs, and my mother confronted me, her voice trembling. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." "I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm doing something for my children and for me." "We gave you everything," she retorted. "A roof over your head when you had no place to go, help with the children, help in your divorce. And I've enjoyed it." I broke in. "But that doesn't mean my children should be treated like less than Ethan." "We never said that," she maintained. I bristled. "Your actions spoke louder than any words." My father paced in the room, in a fury. "This has nothing to do with Stephen, does it? You've always been jealous of him." I protested. "No. This is about Jack and Emma being imprisoned in a creepy basement without my knowledge or permission. This is about you demanding that Ethan gets the better rooms because he's Stephen's son. You're taking our words out of context," my mother complained. "Am I?" I replied, staring directly at her. "You said, and I repeat, our other grandson should have the best rooms. What were you saying, other than that my children should get something less?" The twins had up their packed essentials: clothes, books, Jack's science kit, Emma's athletic equipment, and the jewelry box her father had gotten for her. When we had it all prepared to go down, my father was in the doorway. "Where are you going exactly?" "This so-called house you say you've rented." "We're going to live with a friend till our house, next week, will be available," I patiently explained. "And how on earth do you plan on paying rent on your nurse's salary?" He jeered. The condescending attitude stung something deep inside me. I put the bags away and stood up to him. "Dad, I earn $65,000 a year as a pediatric nurse. I have excellent credit, minimal debt, and I've saved up for almost 2 years. I am more than capable of providing for my family without your help." He looked stunned. I knew he had no idea how much I earned or how I allocated money. He had simply assumed I was struggling along because that was what fit into his tale of me. "The rental market is terrible nowadays," my mom interrupted. "How in the world did you manage to rent an apartment?" "Months I've been looking," I told him. "I have friends and acquaintances. Just because I didn't tell you doesn't mean I didn't make a plan." Trip by trip, we fueled up the car. My parents sat in silence, the weight of reality at last sinking in. I made one last tour of the house. As we set off to make sure we hadn't forgotten anything, I found my mother brewing coffee in the kitchen, her body rigid and mechanical as if trying to hold on to normality gone. "We're going now," I told my mother. Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know why you're doing this. We are family." "Yes, we are," I said softly. "And that's why this is so hard. Families should respect and value each other. Jack and Emma have not felt that way here in a very long time." "That's not true," she protested softly. "Mom, you told them yesterday that they didn't deserve the same kind of accommodations as their cousin," I reminded her. "How do you think that made them feel?" She glared at him. "Not a word. We didn't mean it like that." "How were you going to mean it?" I demanded. She had no answer. We were getting ready to leave. My dad made his final attempt. "This is a mistake, Amanda. You're clouding your head about what's best for your children with pride." "No, Dad," I said firmly. "For the first time in a very long time, I'm putting what is right for my children first, above all else, even your approval." Jack and Emma shared stilted goodbyes with their grandparents, torn after years of being schooled to revere and love people who had hurt them so casually as we drove away. Emma whispered, "Will we ever see Grandma and Grandpa again?" "Yes," I said. But it will be different. We'll come on our terms, only when we're treated respectfully. The next few days at Nancy's were tranquil. The twins seemed lighter, laughing and playing as I hadn't seen for months. I called in sick to work to arrange for our new place. Speaking with the landlord so we could get the keys ahead of time and start moving in. The IT was a tiny house, but ideal for us. 3 bedrooms, an infinitesimal backyard, and a kitchen bathed in sunlight. It was in their school district, so the twins would not have to change schools, and my own commute to the hospital would be shorter than from my parents' house WY Friday afternoon. We were getting settled. Nancy and a couple of coworkers came over to help, turning what could have been a stressful day into a party. By evening, the beds were up, the kitchen was functional, and the living room was cozy enough for all of us to huddle in it together. That night, after having pizza delivered and placing the twins in their own rooms for the very first time in nearly 2 years, I actually sat in the living room by myself and wept, not with sadness, but with relief, and with the bittersweet pride of knowing we had fought for a better life, and my phone had been ringing with my parents' messages all day. Angry accusations, tearful pleas, all day, but I had only picked up once to assure them we were all right. The next Monday, they just showed up. I had just returned from walking the twins to school. "How did you get our address?" I demanded, grudgingly allowing them in. "Your Aunt Susan told us." My father admitted. "She thought we should try to work things out." I made coffee and watched as they surveyed our small but warm home. "It's smaller than I imagined," my mother commented. "It's perfect for the 3 of us." I replied, "Amanda, we want you to come home. This has dragged on long enough." My father chipped in. "This is where we're living now." I stated firmly. "But the children need their grandparents," my mother begged, "and their uncle and cousin." "Bless them with respect and love," I said. "When you can do that at all times, you're free to be a part of their lives." "We've always loved them," my mother wailed. "Love is not an emotion, Mom," I explained. "It's the way you treat others. It's the choices you make that show you what matters most to you." They stayed for nearly an hour, swinging between guilt trips and appeals to family, before finally conceding that perhaps they had been inconsiderate. "We didn't know how it seemed to you," my father said. "We just thought we were helping Stephen and Melissa."
And I can see that, I said. But you helped them at the expense of my children's safety and well-being. That is something I cannot blink at. As they left, we had reached a tentative understanding. They would visit our new house, and we would go in for Sunday dinner in 2 weeks. A small step, but an important one. In the following weeks, word of our departure filtered through the extended family. Everyone was supportive, having seen the favoritism for themselves. Aunt Susan was a frequent caller, dropping by with cookies and showing a real interest in the lives of the twins. Work-wise, I was unexpectedly promoted to charge nurse on the children's floor, with a substantial pay raise and more stable hours. More time with Jack and Emma. Meanwhile, Stephen and Melissa were barely coping without me to handle household work and childcare, and my parents, in their 60s now, were worn out from attempting to maintain the house as well as keep up with an energetic baby. The last time we did go to that Sunday dinner, there was tension but good manners. Stephen and Melissa were decidedly less condescending, maybe finally understanding how much simpler things had been with me there. Most significantly, Jack and Emma flourished. Jack's teacher told us there was dramatic improvement in concentration and engagement, and Emma played clarinet every day in her bedroom without fear or criticism. One night, when I was putting Emma into bed, she whispered, "I like our house, Mom. I feel like I can breathe here." And in that instant, I knew that for certain we had made the correct decision. We had built a place where my children could actually breathe, literally and metaphorically. And whatever we had gone through in the process had not been for nothing. 6 months into our sudden exodus from my parents' house, our lives were changed in ways I could hardly have envisioned. Our modest rental home had become a real home, ringing with laughter, pictures stuck to the refrigerator, and the warm clutter of family life. Jack and Emma had also flourished, their confidence restored as they fit into an atmosphere in which they felt valued and respected. My charge nurse promotion brought not only an improved schedule and higher pay, but also challenges that stretched and satisfied me on the job. For the first time in my adult years, I felt that I was flourishing, not merely getting by. Our relationship with my parents had become something warily friendly. Sunday lunches had become a regular thing, with boundaries drawn and, for the most part, respected. My mother had gradually started to accept the favoritism that had existed within our family dynamics, although my father still couldn't bring himself to see himself in what had occurred. Ever since last fall, I've been thinking a lot about it, my mother said on one of her visits. She had started visiting on her own without my father during the past few weeks. I didn't know we were hurting Jack and Emma, she confessed. What made you realize it? I asked, really wanting to know. She exhaled, her eyes looking older than the lines on her face. Things never went back to normal after you left. Stephen and Melissa remained for a month longer, but without you, I was buried trying to keep up the house and assist with Ethan. I began to see how much work you had been doing, how much I had taken you for granted. It was the most like an apology she had said, and I accepted it. She went on. Stephen and Melissa began fighting all the time, over childcare, over the renovations that never got done, about money. They returned to their house before Christmas, although the work wasn't complete. I wasn't surprised. Without the buffer of your presence, the cracks in their relationship widened. How are they now? I asked. More out of politeness than actual concern, she conceded. They're attending couples counseling. Your father considers it nonsense, but I believe it could help them. Melissa returned to work full-time, and they're having trouble with childcare arrangements. I nodded, experiencing a pang of sympathy in spite of it all. Parenting was difficult enough even under the best of circumstances, and their relationship had never seemed based on the firmest ground. But the greatest transformation was in my kids. Jack's worry had all but dissipated, and his innate imagination had returned. He'd started an after-school arts program and was flourishing under the tutelage of a kind, nurturing teacher. Emma had made the advanced band at school and was even discussing cutting it as a tryout for the soccer team in the spring. One night, sitting side by side trying to solve a puzzle, Emma approached a subject with caution. Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa treat us differently than Ethan? She asked, putting in a piece. I thought about my answer. I believe that individuals at times have preconceived notions that will not allow them to see very well. Grandpa and Grandma always viewed Uncle Stephen as special. When he had Ethan, they gave him the extra attention. We are their grandchildren, too. Yes, we are, Jack replied. And they do love us. They just didn't know how to equally show it. Is that why we left? Emma asked quietly. We left because everybody should be treated kindly and with respect, I clarified. When that wasn't being done, we had to make our own space where we could all thrive. Jack nodded contemplatively. I like it better here anyway. At Grandma and Grandpa's, I always felt like I was in the way. You are never in the way here, I told him. This is your home, and you belong just the way you are. Children are incredibly resilient when provided with safety, consistency, and open communication. Their maturity at dealing with these experiences never ceased to leave me in awe. In April, a sudden chance presented itself. A small 3-bedroom bungalow in our neighborhood came on the market, priced just within my grasp due to my new promotion and frugal saving. After meeting with a mortgage broker and going over my finances, I submitted an offer. To my surprise and joy, it was accepted. Purchasing a home had been a far-off dream when we departed from my parents' residence. Now, just less than 1 year later, it was turning into a reality. The home required cosmetic repairs, but it was sound and had a fantastic location. Above all, it would be ours. When I told the twins, they were so excited. They started right away talking about how to furnish their rooms, what color to paint the front door, and how to put in a garden in the backyard. Can we get a dog when we move in? Jack asked with hope. We'll see, I said, warming up to the idea. A dog would finish off our little family in so many ways. Even my dad reappeared in our lives in a surprise manner. His background in home purchases allowed him to volunteer to go over the inspection report with me. The roof has 5 years or more of life left in it, he said, sitting in my kitchen table. But plan on replacing the water heater sooner than later. His down-to-earth advice was beneficial, and I was grateful he was offering me encouragement without controlling or critiquing my choices. A small but important change in our dynamic. "I'm proud of you, Amanda," he mentioned out of nowhere as he was walking out. "Purchasing a house by yourself is no easy feat." The words I had dreamed of hearing for most of my life surprised me. "Thank you, Dad." I was able to stammer. "I know I haven't been fair at times," he went on awkwardly. "Your mother and I have been discussing a lot how we did things. I can't alter the past, but I'd like to improve from here on out." It was not an apology in full, but from my proud, obstinate father, it was enormous. "I would like that too," I said to him. The day we finalized the house, Jack and Emma were in school. I signed it by myself, but took a picture of the keys to show them when they returned home. Standing in the vacant living room of our new home, my home, I felt a wave of feeling so strong it caused me to cry. 2 years earlier, I had been a newly divorced mother, unsure of my future and reliant on the provisional help of my parents. Now, I was a homeowner, successfully building my career and, most importantly, giving my children the stable, loving home they deserved. The road had been bittersweet at times, making me face bitter realities regarding my family and myself. I had to understand that establishing boundaries was not selfish but a survival mechanism, that fighting for my children sometimes meant leaving behind noxious environments, and that my value did not have to be defined by how others perceived it. My family and I settled into our new place on a warm Saturday in May, aided by friends, coworkers, and yes, even my parents. The mood was festive as we put furniture in place, unpacked boxes, and ordered pizza for the whole crew that assisted us. By night, when only my parents were left, we sat on the back porch together, observing Jack and Emma getting to know the yard. "This is a good home," my mother said softly. "You have done well, Amanda." "Thank you," I said, taking the praise as it was given to me without hesitation or second guessing. As the sun went down on our first day in the new home, I looked back on the path that had led us to this place. The hurt of that October day, when my children had been found lesser than their cousin, had become a force for good. Often, the biggest betrayals bring about the most needed parting. What had appeared to be an ending, the day we rolled up our bags and set off from my parents' home, had indeed been a start at self-respect, at real independence, at teaching my children what it was to stand up for yourself and for the ones you care for. Family, I had come to understand, was not merely about blood or duty. It was about respect for one another, regular kindness, and the decision to love and cherish each individual for who they were. I and my children had built our own family group, resilient, supportive, and loving, and we had welcomed others into our fold who respected us for the dignity we offered. That evening, as I tucked in Jack and Emma into their own rooms in our own home, I felt a profound, unwavering sense of peace. We had ridden out the storm and at last discovered firm ground. Has there ever been a time when you needed to make a tough choice to safeguard the well-being of your family? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories of family victories. Remember, occasionally the boldest move you can make is to pack your bags and build the life you and your children deserve. Thanks for listening, and may you always have the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.